believe that your heart has been cheating from the start. I won't believe it's just a game. I won't believe it's just the same again. I won't believe it's just the same again. Just the same again. I won't believe you could be far away, but staying on my mind. I still believe at last there won't be anything that's left behind, my friend. I understand that you just saw the signs, but not the sense, and laid your trust in me. I won't believe. I won't believe that you will be there, that's all. You know that I believe this is what a friend is for. I said I won't believe, but then I understand that you could see the signs, but
Jedi named Obi-Wan droid in the galaxy. Jedi named droid in the galaxy. Jedi named Obi-Wan droid in the galaxy. Jedi named droid in the galaxy.
You don't believe in the Force, do you?
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything.
the victorious rebels congratulated each other, joyous in the knowledge that their fight was over at last, and that news of their hard-won freedom would soon reach across the galaxy.
All right, they can see us and hear us. Hi, everybody out in YouTube. Let's just make sure we are ready to go here. Okay, all systems are go. So without further ado, let's go ahead and kick it off here. Hello, fellow Galactic listeners. I'm Aaron Julian, and this is WSTR, Galactic Public Access, a Star Wars podcast. Welcome to episode 204. Happy New Year, everybody. We hope you and yours are well, and with everything going on, we want to be a platform that promotes positivity, life, and hope. Please check out episodes 174 and episodes 180 for more about that, as we talked about hope in these difficult times. Today, however, we are talking to Amy Richau, and she wrote a new book, Star Wars, I Love You, I Know. Lessons in Love and Friendship. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We also have Miss Heather Allred. Thanks for hanging out with us.
There's no place I'd rather be.
Awesome. Fantastic. And on that same note, why don't you go ahead and tease that news for us?
Absolutely. All right. Later in the show, we're going to find out the meanings behind the three following items: Boston Pride, a different partner, and oops, we goofed.
No, really?
I'm not going to tell you who goofed, but somebody goofed.
Thought it was us. Never.
I hope not.
Okay, let's just cut to the chase here. We're going to get right to our main topic with our special guest. Okay, Amy Richau, January 2021 is here, and so is your new book, Star Wars, I Love You, I Know, Lessons in Love and Friendship. We have copies here. Man, how's it feel? It's here. The day's finally come.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It was last year was so intense in so many ways. And, all of my work was kind of done through email. And so for a long time, I was like, is this a joke? Like, does this book exist?
Yeah.
Is this some elaborate prank? And, I had seen, a couple months ago, a PDF of the finalized, version, but to have it, in my hands and to see, people taking pictures of it, it's amazing.
Fantastic. So I'm looking at my notes here, and we had you way back in January 2019, episode 107, 2 years ago. Wow. And we talked about your project, 365 Days of Star Wars Women. How did that pan out when all the dust settled? How did that go?
Well, I think the fact that I just wrote a book it means it works. Yeah, I mean, so I meant to look up, but I didn't when I had been here before. And so the 365 Star Wars Women project was basically in 2018. Every day I profiled a female character from movies and films, TV shows, comics and books. And I interviewed a whole bunch of women who worked behind the scenes. And I've kind of continued the project, but not daily, but I still do update it with new interviews. And now I'm like, oh, I didn't do that many. And then I'm like, oh, I did 80. But I mean, they're just kind of small bursts of content for the most part, except for the interviews. But I really do. I think that project made me kind of stick out, and people knew me for that. And that is what people know me, oh, you're the one that did the 365 thing. And I think that is helpful when you're one of many, 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 many writers who want to write for Star Wars.
Wow, fantastic. So did this book deal come out of that? Did one lead to the other, or more of a, hey, you're on the radar now? How did that work out?
So I don't know exactly why they chose me for this. I haven't asked directly. I had interviewed several women who'd worked at DK. I had been asked to do a writing sample because I kind of I made it very known to DK that I would like to write a book, and to everyone everyone basically that I'd really like to write a nonfiction Star Wars book, and especially a DK book. I had done a writing sample for them a couple years ago. And I talked to some people there, like people knew my work. I think I worked at StarWars.com, and my first article for Star Wars Insider came out in December, but I had actually been asked to write it in February. And so I think that they asked me to write this book in June, but I had already kind of been hooked up with Star Wars Insider. And so I think some people at Lucasfilm just kind of knew who I was, knew I was able to write on deadline, and I wasn't a jerk, which I honestly just feel like, don't be a jerk. That's like, a lot of people can't do that part. And so I think that just through a whole bunch of different kind of, varieties, like that somehow, like my name just kind of came up. And they asked me, and I'm, super thrilled that I was, but it really just kind of came, it's like, I feel like it's like you hear about it, but like, I was sitting on my porch playing Animal Crossing, and I checked my email, and they asked me, like, do you want to write the text for this book? And I was like, hell yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Awesome. So was this your idea, their idea? Kind of a combination?
It was all their idea. Okay. So they had the book, they knew what it was going to be called. They had a whole concept. They knew what they wanted for the tone. They actually presented me with kind of like, here are the four or five different kinds of love, because there's family, enduring love, it's complicated. I think the whole book could be called It's Complicated, because it's a lighthearted, romance kind of, romance and relationship book where like everybody in the book has died tragically.
Yeah.
So you're really just trying to go for like, you're not talking about that part. You're talking about like, other parts that you can kind of, connect with in your own, relationship. But I did get to pitch who was going to be in the book. Some DK editors said that they wanted, a couple of things to be in there, but most of them, almost all of them, but like two are ones that I pitched. Some of the ones I didn't pitch are ones that are great, but they were smaller characters than I thought they would accept, because they told me they wanted it to be film heavy, which is why there isn't a ton of animation. If there's ever a sequel, which I don't know anything about, but like if there would be a sequel, like, and if I got to do it, like I would definitely push to have much more animated characters, because I think that there are a few in here, but I think it would be great to have more. But yeah, no. But then it really just was a collaboration between the editor when we came up with the list, and Pamela Afram was her who I worked with the most, and she would talk to me. We just exchange emails about like, what do you think the lesson should be? What do you think the quote should be? And a lot of that changed as we were working on it.
All right, so maybe one day we'll be able to talk about Obi-Wan and Satine in a follow-up book.
Yeah, maybe they'll have. I don't know how. Like, it's like I don't think that they can bring Satine back to life, though. Sadly, I feel like they can bring almost everyone back to life, but
no one's ever really gone. If that's anything that we can learn. Okay, so can you? So this was an idea that originated with DK, and then it was pitched to you. How did it actually get into writing? You mentioned having like a back and forth between you and the editors about like who's going to be in it, what kind of ideas or lessons do you want to impart? But from there, like, how do you go about it?
So the first thing was coming up with the list of the pairs, and I really wanted to have pairs that were from all of the different, like all 11 movies that really like were based in those. And so like for some, for friendships, I wanted to have male friendships, female friendships, male and female friendships. Yeah, like rival, like, you wanted to have the full kind of like, I wanted to have droids. I wanted to have non-human characters. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't want every single character to be white, which is actually, kind of challenging sometimes because, like with the movies, because like, the diversity is getting much, much better. But so I didn't want to like, I wanted it to be something that like, no matter what movie you like, or if you like Rebels, or if you like the Clone Wars, that like you would be able to latch on to something. But a lot of there are some characters that I really wish could have been in here. which is always the case when you have kind of like some sort of list. But I think that what was important was not having the same relationship over and over and over again. You were like, they were a Padawan, they were a master, and it was complicated, like you had to kind of like come with different things. And sometimes I would come up with the quote, because like the very first thing I did was come up with like a list of the pairs and a list of like the quotes that I thought were like the best quote from that pair. But sometimes that quote wouldn't actually match up with what their lesson would be. Like when we figured out what we were going to, and that was really like a back and forth with the editor. Like, and I think that you had Hannah and Lando, and we had talked about like doing a rivalry one, or like, should it be about giving a friend a second chance? And so for several of them, I actually wrote several different versions of these paragraphs, because it's only a paragraph of text.
Right.
But I had a pretty tight deadline. I only had a couple weeks to turn in all the text. And so it really was just me flooding them with text, and just being and just making sure that like they had, because I wrote, I think 30, and I think that there's only 25 here, just because they wanted to, not only does everyone at DK have to like it, but then they have to go by Lucasfilm, and then everyone there has to like it. So it really like goes through, there's a ton of people who played a part in this book. And they all had the final say, much more than me. but luckily I really do like the final result. So.
Gotcha.
Excellent. So you're talking through like the different types of relationships. Obviously we have some of our romantic ones, and you bring in droids, which you get as many thumbs up as I can give you for that, as a droid lover. What do you think that you've learned in the process of publishing this book? Has it been just publishing? Has it been a certain way that you've seen a character in a different way, or?
I think it's kind of both. I think that, definitely this was the first book that I had worked on. And so like, it was a whole different world. And so just understanding kind of the process of like, what parts am I involved in? What part am I not? Like, I mean, sometimes I would see these, mock-ups of like what the layout would look like. It was so fast. And I'm like, these people are so talented, because like, that is something that I can't do whatsoever. But it was fascinating just kind of like seeing the back and forth and seeing how things would change. And I think that when I was looking for the book for pairs, it really kind of, you were thinking like, wow, like, I wish that, I need there to be female friendships, like, but where, how many are there? Like, there aren't a ton of, like, there are a lot of like characters that maybe don't have like a fully realized relationship in them, but like maybe in the new content, like they will. But it was interesting to kind of figure out like some of my favorite characters didn't end up being in here just because it didn't kind of fit the puzzle piece of like what this book was. Like, what kind of relationship are we looking for? Like, we wanted to have some humor in it. We wanted to have some, tragedy in it, because like Star Wars is tragedy, but it's also very funny. And so it's kind of finding that balance. And I think I do look at some of the characters a little differently. It really kind of, I didn't have a chance to rewatch all Star Wars because I didn't have the time. But more of what I did is like, I want to go through and I'm going to watch every single scene that Rey and Finn interact with each other. And it was kind of an interesting way to rewatch Star Wars, is just looking at the relationships, which I think, and I hope that there are more books that really kind of focus more on the different relationships, because I think that, that's why it matters who wins in these conflicts, and like who, the victor is because, if you don't have anyone to come home with, if you don't have friends who are like on the other side, like, then it's just a whole bunch of pew pew without like any kind of meaning behind it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's fun. All right. Trying to see here. Got our little notes, friends of the internet. So, what advice do you have for someone who might want to get down the path of writing?
So I think we've gone over don't be a jerk. And I really
number one, like, don't be a jerk.
I really can't I do think that it's a small world of like people who want to write. And if you think of it, especially if you're like trying to kind of break through like on social media, which is really what I did, because I didn't have when I decided that I wanted to write, I'd been writing about, I'm a huge Denver Broncos fan. And when I decided I wanted to write, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, like I started writing for some Denver Broncos blogs that were more like fan blogs, and then kind of worked my way up. But then with Star Wars, like I really started from the beginning. And so I think that, and a lot of people have given this advice, and I totally agree with it. Try to meet people, try to like be in, like I wrote for a blog that no longer exists, but it had a group of people like who were writing and editing, and I'm still in contact with some of them. Like you kind of like find your people, or like if you find if you're in a podcast, like a lot of times, like, you kind of like have your little crew, and then it's good to have that crew because then you can like bounce ideas off of each other, and you can like lift each other up when you're feeling down.
Right.
But I started writing for Trisha Barr's Fangirl blog. And one of the reasons why I did it is because she was more successful than I was. And I knew that she wouldn't publish something that she thought was crappy just because she wanted content. And so I learned from her. And then, I asked her if she would, help me, like, I asked her if she would kind of suggest me to StarWars.com. And she did. She was quite lovely and generous doing that. I've had other editors kind of suggest me for Star Wars Insider. And, in a way, I think that like the reason why DK ended up doing it is because I think I had people who thought that I was a, reasonable person. And, that they felt like they could, you want to be someone who people think that they can take that chance on you to suggest you, because it's horrible if you like suggest someone and then they're just a jackass and like they don't, like they argue with you, they don't take edits, they don't take any feedback, they don't turn stuff in on time.
They have like a huge ego.
A little bit of professionalism really just, I think, goes a long way. And nobody's perfect. But like I always think it's interesting when people talk about pitching. I hate pitching. Like it's horrible, even to places that like know me. Like pitching is just awful. And but when you talk to editors, like they're like, people pitch us all the time, and it's like they've never read the website. They have no idea that like we never publish stuff. Like you're pitching. So that always makes you feel a little bit better. You're like, at least, I read the submission guideline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, I would also say don't expect people to read your stuff, especially if you're a fan and you start out the way I did and you're writing for a fan blog. Like, don't expect to have a lot of followers online. Don't expect a lot of people to know who your stuff is. Like, that's just not it. I think it rarely happens that way. Like, it's a slow burn. And, the more you do it, the more successful hopefully you'll be. But I know a lot of other people say like never write for free. That you should never, ever, ever write for free. And I wrote for free and it worked out, but it was because I never felt like I had to write. Like I did it because I was enjoying it and because I wanted to do it. I think that some people really I worry about some people with like fan blogs and podcasts where like they're apologizing when they're not like putting out content. I'm like, man, like, this is not your job. Like, don't feel bad. Like, you should just take a break. Like, if you need it. I mean, I do all the time with my fanish stuff. Like, I'm like, nope, like, that's just not going to happen because I'm having a bad week. And that's okay.
So, like, don't sell yourself short, but also don't have like a big ego about yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's this fine line of like, I think a lot of people say like, don't say that you're going to be a writer or you're trying to be a writer. Like say that you are a writer. Mm-hmm. Like have a faith in your work. Like just because you're not getting paid for it maybe doesn't mean that it's not good. Doesn't mean that it's not actually better than what's on some paid sites. Like I read a lot more fan Star Wars content than I do from like big media because I think a lot of it is kind of trashy and like clickbaity and, just really not the style that I want to write. There's also a lot of really good big media like Star Wars coverage, but I really do tend to read more fan stuff. Like I just find it kind of more interesting and, more geeky in a way of just doing deep dives that, Vanity Fair can't afford to do.
Yeah. So. It's almost like it comes from a place that's more honest in a way where they're just writing it just because they love to talk about it. They're not trying to meet a quota or a deadline or anything. They're just like, hey, this is what I like, and here you go.
Yeah, I mean, some of the interviews that I've really enjoyed doing have been well after the project has aired, because then you can actually talk to the person more as a person and not go through publicity. And, like
Yeah.
it's not just like this big kind of a thing. And it's more like, hey, 5 years ago when you were in that Star Wars thing, can we talk about that? And like those tend to be kind of my favorite interviews, both to listen to or to read or just for me. To talk about, just because I mean that's like the best thing for me over the last few years has been interviewing both fans and people who have worked on Star Wars projects.
That's cool. I dig that. So you've got your little foot in the door for writing a book with DK. And you've kind of talked, if a sequel were to happen, you're not confirming or denying anything in this podcast.
Yeah, that is my dream. That is not like that's nothing else.
Yes. So what, that is a dream. Are there other projects that you would love to tap into? Would you expand on the 365, women? Is there a different nonfiction or fiction that you're like, if I could just get my hands on and go for it?
I think also, I mean, I definitely plan on continuing 365 just because it still brings me joy to highlight, different people who are working, behind the scenes, especially. I would love to write, I mean, like my dream right now, I guess I have two, and I talk about it all the time on Twitter, so excuse me if you follow me there, because you'll know what these are without me even saying it. I would love to write a nonfiction reference book about the High Republic.
Ooh.
I certainly hope that someone gets to write it. Probably someone is writing it right now, but like maybe there'll be enough that I can write another one. Like I really, really enjoyed the High Republic stuff, and so I would love to write nonfiction referencing like the character encyclopedias and the visual guides. Like if I ever got a chance to write one of those about literally any Star Wars content, I would just completely die. Like that would make me extremely happy. But I'd like to write about, Marvel or Disney or like other, franchises too. Like that would be great. Really, I hope that I hope that DK, I mean, they seem to think that, I've had nice comments, but like, I feel like anytime you do a project somewhere, like it's not really real to me until they ask you to do it again. And then you're like, okay, I didn't screw it up. Maybe this will actually, like happen again. But really, I mean, there's, writing about Star Wars and Star Wars history is something that I really enjoy doing, and it's something that I'm doing a little bit more with Star Wars Insider this year. So I'm excited about stuff coming up.
That's
Fantastic. Cool. So shifting gears a little bit, so you've got your ideal fan in front of you, and they've ordered your book, they've purchased it, they're about to read it. What would you hope that they feel or learn from this book as they read through it?
I think that just reading it and connecting with a character maybe that they hadn't connected with so much, or just kind of thinking about Star Wars not so much as like battles of the good and evil so much, but really kind of like the next time you watch Star Wars films, like think a little bit more about the characters and the connections. Like, I mean, it's it's a short and sweet text for all of them, and so it's kind of like you laugh, you cry, you all like I mean, it's that's the kind of book that this is. It's a perfect kind of like gift book just to kind of like from one Star Wars fan to another. And I hope that for some, fans that maybe didn't see Rogue One or didn't see Rebels, that they might, be curious about some of these characters and some of the relationships that get talked about from there. And I hope that, people who, if there's any, creators of Star Wars that read it, they might, say like, I wish that there were more relationships like this in Star Wars. Like, I'm always for, like, I want more Star Wars sisters. Like, we've got Satine and Bo-Katan who are not in this, but the Tico sisters are. But I want to be able to choose from, like, 10 Star Wars sisters.
So that's almost like a goal that you've had, or even extending back to the 365 days of women in Star Wars, is that you want to have that kind of representation in the characters in the Star Wars universe. Because I've always said myself, like, the galaxy's a big place. There's room for a ton of stories within the Star Wars universe. It seems like a common thread between all these projects is like, yes, you want to have more of these different kinds of relationships and different kinds of characters in Star Wars. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you want, I loved the original trilogy. And so you could say that Leia was enough in a way for me to love the original trilogy. I mean, no offense to Aunt Beru and Mon Mothma, and Mula, but I mean, Rogue One is very, very male heavy when it comes to like the cast, but like it might be my favorite of the Disney Star Wars films. And so it's not like I need every film or every project to be kind of 50-50, but I do think it's important to show that women aren't just the straight white brunette heroes, which, you've got, well, Kira's not really a hero. That's like a little bit more like that. Was a good little change. I love Kira. But you've got Jane, you've got Padme, and you've got Leia, but like, you have Ventress, and you have, like these other characters who are not, you've got Val, you've got characters who have different motives, feel different ways. Like you want to feel like female characters can do anything that male characters can do. And I mean, it would be interesting to know if a man wrote this book. I mean, if another woman wrote this book, it might be a different list of characters that ended up in this book. But I was, nobody, for the most part, like the list that I submitted, it's kind of like most of these are obvious choices. But like if they would have tried to cut, the Tico sisters or Leia and Holdo's friendship, like I would have gone to bat for them. I'd be like, no, like we need sisters, we need female friendships. Like there has to be, something in there. And I think that the sequel trilogy really was the easiest one to pull from, because the sequel trilogy is heavily about relationships, in my opinion. And so like there were so many relationships. There are quite a few sequel trilogy relationships in this book. There could have been, even more.
Yeah, I have to quickly say, as I was going through your book in preparation for our podcast today, and for our friends on the live stream who get to see the visuals, I actually just opened up to the page in the chapter about Leia with Holdo, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know that in watching the film I ever really kind of saw that friendship, because you're so engrossed in what's going on story-wise and everything that you're like, right. No, these two women, they really, like, Leia put her in charge. This was a thing. They were bonded. They both lead, and
they lifted each other up, and they weren't rivals, and they weren't like catty. Right. You see that more. When there's two women, you see more of like conflict with them.
Right.
Which is also like, which isn't bad. Like, but it's like that's the problem if you only have a couple women there, or like if you only have a couple, like if you have like one black person per 5 films, like then that's just not representation whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Like it's just that's not it. And so I think that the future of Star Wars, I think, is going to be more diverse, and I think that we're going to see, now that we've got some, Leslie Headland with the Acolyte, which I can't, wait for her stuff. I'm excited to see, with a woman in, as a showrunner, like what kind of characters and dynamics we'll have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I just wanted to quickly share my appreciation for this book, because I was like, I never saw it that way before. That's cool.
Yes.
And I need to watch more Clone Wars and Rebels, apparently, because there's a few that I'm like, I don't know their story yet.
So in writing this book, have you found yourself kind of looking at your own relationships and friendships in a different way, or starting to apply some of these lessons? How's that look like for you?
I don't know, to me, like the challenging part of this book, because I am kind of like my kind of go-to is like writing reference and writing pure references, that when I would write a paragraph, every time I started, I would have to like write a couple reference paragraphs to like get it out of my system, because like that's just not what this book is. It's what a little bit of the book is, because you're kind of you have to talk about the pair and who they are. So in case people haven't seen Rebels or something like that, then like they'll have any idea what you're talking about. But then it really is making that connection to your own, your own life, your own like relationships. And I actually found that to be the most challenging part of the book. And so it was interesting it was an interesting kind of challenge to do that. And so I think in a way that it has kind of changed. But I think the other thing is that like, especially like the easiest example is Kanan and Hera. There's the quote is like, "You know how I feel about you, do I?" Like them saying that. And the lesson is like to, tell, if you love someone, tell them. Now, if you're writing about Kanan and Hera, like if you only have like, a short time to tell people about it, like that's not what you're going to talk to them about. If you're thinking just pure reference, like that's not the biggest part of their relationship. That's not the most important part of their relationship. Like their relationship is probably the healthiest of any Star Wars relationship that's ever, been on screen. But it was one lesson of probably like 5 or 6 that could have been told about that, that character. It just so happened for them, like that was, it was a little part, and it was different than a lot of the other stuff in the book. And so I, wrote about it. But it was also kind of interesting just to think of like, what are the things, how can you pull different parts of these relationships into your own life? Because I don't really think of it, that did not come naturally to me. I don't like look at the, it's fantasy. And so like, with some of them you did, and some of them, some of them were a little bit more challenging, but it was a very fun challenge.
So, considering the variety of different relationships and friendships that you see on display in this book, are there any changes that you wish future creators in the Star Wars space would uh, be aware of and kind of integrate into their own work? What would you like to see more of, or maybe less of, going into the future with Star Wars?
Well, I think I'm all about like male friendships, female friendships, men and women being friends. Like I think that is important. I hope that there's more positive romance, like where people don't die. I hope that there's more parents where the parent doesn't immediately die. Like, and I mean, of course, it's Star Wars, so people are going to die, but like, I think it would be nice to have some more stable relationships to kind of like have in the mix. In general, like I'm not a fiction writer, but I thought it was interesting when I was, there were certain characters that I really loved Janna in The Rise of Skywalker, but I was like, I felt like we didn't get to know her well enough to like link her with someone, because she's still so much of a mystery that like, you couldn't like, there wasn't enough of her on screen to kind of like have like a lesson that I felt was, strong enough in comparison to the other ones. And so I was thinking that like if I was a fiction writer, I would think like, are all of the characters in this story, like, are they, could they be in this book? Like would I be able to have them in kind of a relationship book? Or, I mean, of course some characters are mysteries on purpose. But maybe that, I mean, just to make sure that like, if you're doing a book like this for a major franchise, certainly like you want to not come out of it being like, oh, we don't have any female friendships. Oops, like none of them are friends with each other. Like that's a problem. Like, and so like if you could kind of like tick through here and be like, okay, like I mean, some relationships work out, some don't. Like there's some stuff about boundaries in this book, and like sometimes it's time to step away, and like other times it's okay to like open your heart to them, like as long as it seems like it's a right, decision for you. But, if you can't kind of sprinkle relationships in your story throughout this book, like, maybe you're, if you feel like all your relationships are in the same category, maybe it's time to kind of mix things up. But, I don't write fiction, so it's very easy for me to like, give people advice.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of my frustrations with the sequel trilogy, is like you have Poe and Finn, who they just kind of developed this very natural friendship, and like you wanted them to be together and succeed, and it's like maybe it could have even been more than that, and that would have been awesome. And then it just kind of went nowhere. And I'm like, oh, well, that was a missed opportunity.
Well,
So
definitely, since even if someone's in the friend category in this book, doesn't mean that something else is going on.
that's true. Yeah. I'm just saying, I would not have been surprised if it
I
went.
know, like I was worried that people were going to be mad that I like friend zoned a whole bunch of characters. Obviously, it had to like all to stay with the canon, but like I was like definitely like all of these relationships. Like once these movies are released, like they're all yours. Like and whatever your interpretation of them is, and whatever you want them to be, that's right because it's yours.
Sure. My whole point with that is that I was happy with them being friends, and I would have been happy if it had been more than that. But to see that kind of thing, that kind of dynamic between them just kind of fall to the wayside and not really pay off in a way that it could have been, it's a bit disappointing. And so to have more relationships like that, where it could pay off in different ways, I would love to see that.
Yeah, I think that, there's so many, even though we've had quite a bit of Star Wars content, like the amount that we're about to get in the next couple of years is going to just really open up the doors for all kinds of things that we haven't seen. And I think that that's one of the reasons why so many people are responding well to the High Republic is because we're seeing Jedi in all kinds of relationships that we never have before.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's great, smart. I mean, because no one wants to see the same thing over and over and over again. So.
Oh, absolutely.
So I noticed one power couple was missing from our book. And I don't know.
There's so many, but who were you sad about?
I was sad about Mando and the child. And I didn't know if that was a timing issue with the book and the show. We were not given the okay to do Mandalorian. So that's another it's another sequel opportunity is that we can, we can have Mandalorian characters, if we wait long enough, we can have, whoever Obi-Wan Kenobi falls in love with on Tatooine in that show, but can't be with, we can add that tragedy to, Satine and Obi-Wan here. Yeah. There's, who knows what, will be in there. Options are endless.
But yeah, with the 365 project, since it never ends, I can always add people, and so I never feel like anyone is truly left out. But there are characters and relationships that aren't in this book that just kill me because it just there's only so many pages.
Right. So if there was one kind of top relationship that you really wanted in the book, and you have the ability to share it without breaking any sort of rules with publishing or what have you, what relationship would that be?
I think that it would be Cassian. Cassian not being in this book was the one that bothered me the most because I love that character so much, and there just was a lot. I love Rogue One a lot. There's 3 pairs from Rogue One in here. I think either Cassian and Jyn or maybe Cassian and K2SO. Probably their relationship might have been in there, but now that he isn't in there, if there's a sequel to there's a whole show, and so who knows? We get him and his sister that I think might be in it. I don't know, so. Again, I'm just trying to get myself a job,
Yeah. Please, DK.
We're not asking.
Valentine's Day comes around every year. Don't you think we need one for every year?
I love that. That's great. That brings me joy.
So besides the kind of relationship dynamics within the realm of Star Wars, is there anything in particular that you'd like to work on next as far as a Star Wars centered book?
I think something that's Star Wars reference is my kind of go-to, and so I think to me working on a visual guide or something like that would kind of be my number one thing. But that's Pablo until he goes away. So
yeah, they got him working overtime in the dungeon.
That he won't be able to do all of it. And I would also I'm quite a fan of Marvel and I'm quite a fan of Disney. With any of those franchises, being able to kind of, if I was able to somehow have my actual job be writing entertainment, making of, art of, books like that, that's the ultimate dream.
Gotcha. You mentioned earlier that reference writing is kind of where you come from or what you aspired to do. Was there like, kind of like a reference guide to Star Wars that kind of sparked that at some time with you, or where did that kind of idea come from?
I think really just, it started with making of books and like learning like behind the scenes. The Rogue One visual guide is, I think, the strongest of all of like the more recent ones because it really kind of told more of a story. It was bigger. It had more kind of space to do that. But I've always been really intrigued by the making of kind of aspect, and I'm a huge history person, and so like that's like a lot of what I'm kind of trying. Like I'm constantly pitching to Star Wars insiders, kind of like let's talk about the history of this or the history of that, or like something like that. But just reading all of like the Bantha Tracks and Lucasfilm magazine, like they're always looking back and kind of creating the history of Star Wars, and so I think that's just what I kind of have always naturally been drawn to. And when I do it, I try to talk about women because it turns out that in a lot of cases, like women had way more to do with it than you would know, and their names just aren't in there, or they're in an image but their name isn't on the caption.
Right.
There's just a lot of that. I mean, which most Star Wars history has been written by men, and so there's a variety of women who are writing more Star Wars now, and that makes me happy just because I do think that it brings a different perspective.
Is there a time period that you feel is like not within the Star Wars lore that is not fleshed out enough that you would like to write for? What time period of Star Wars would you like to write for more than any other?
I think if it was like talking about like the history, it would be like High Republic prequels.
Okay.
I think, or like like around like the Clone Wars. I think because like to go back and to really kind of like look back and that I always think it would be nice if they had, and I know why they don't do it is because they don't want to box in fictional writers, but I would love to have like an in-universe book about like the history of Mandalore, the history of Naboo.
That's pretty neat.
Like I think that like something like that, if they ever did one of those, I would come knocking at their door and be like, please, you can pay me less.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is there anything that you can share with our listeners about future projects that you have in store?
So I'm continuing to write for the official Star Wars site. I don't really have anything specific to talk about that's coming up there, although it is droid related, I will tell you that. So because it is droid related. And then I'm really excited about for Star Wars Insider. I think that the next thing is coming out in later this month or early in February. I've had the chance to talk to two of the High Republic authors about like their kind of all their career, including the High Republic, and I really like that. And if you are a fan of Star Wars audio dramas, either in the past or more recent, I did something that was really, really cool to me, at least, which hopefully everyone will think is for you as well. So,
You've had my interest. Now you have my attention. Fantastic. Okay, so where can our listeners find both this book and your body of work?
So the book, I think, is available wherever books are sold. I keep on meaning to go to Barnes & Noble to like see it in person.
Yeah.
And I'm just not going anywhere. So I mean, you can go on the DK site, and the DK website actually lists several different places where you can get it. You support your indie if you can, and you can find me. My website is 365starwars.com. I use my personal Twitter more, which is just at Amy Richau, but there's also at 365_Star Wars. And then on Instagram, it's 365 Star Wars. And I'm doing these like little snapshots for that Twitter and Instagram about droids and planets and creatures, just kind of be geeky about, things a couple times a week, because, why not? You gotta do something to, keep your mind off the world.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we have a new tradition on our show ever since the COVID outbreak hit, where we like to ask all of our guests, where do you find hope in these difficult times?
Yeah, well, that is a good question. Like, I feel like sometimes I'm better at it than other times. I feel like I was actually talking to my husband. I feel like I've been in survival. We've all mostly, I think everyone, but for sure, I feel like I've been in kind of a survival mode ever since the COVID, shut down everything.
Oh, absolutely.
And just doing, for me, like giving myself the grace to like not publish stuff if I don't want to. Fan stuff, like if it's work stuff, like obviously, like you got to make a living, you got to pay the bills, like, and so you got to do that. But when it comes to other things that I kind of like feel like I have to do, but I really don't, really just try to give myself the space to not do that. I always turn to Star Wars when things are not going great, like that to me, like that, like I fell in love with Star Wars and like when I was 10, which was kind of a crappy year for me, friend-wise, and so I think that that's one of the reasons why I really like latched onto it so much. And I really, like, to me, like, Star Wars Twitter, I know is a complete hellscape in so many ways, but being able to communicate with people around the country, around the globe, like, about Star Wars, like, when I haven't been able to see my friends or some of my family, like, has actually been extremely meaningful to me. Like, it has been way better than not. And really, I completely, like, whether you like me or the book or not, it's here because of Star Wars Twitter. Like, because like that's like the only reason why anyone knows, like, like that saw anything that I wrote for the most part. So there is good in the bad.
Yeah,
like, absolutely.
Just gotta look for it.
Yeah.
Yes, and you gotta mute and you gotta block and keep scrolling.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Amy, and being our guest for this episode. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so much fun.
Okay, YouTube audience, we're going to take a very brief break as we let our guest go and get set for the rest of the episode. So stick around. We'll have a little bit of a musical break for you, and we'll be right back. Stick around. And we're back. Cool. Thank you for your patience, everybody at the YouTube. At the YouTube, I sound like an old man. Okay, we
On
are
the Facebook.
on the Facebook. Okay, so we are ready to go. Let's go ahead and get right back into it. Okay, stick around with us as we pay some bills, because as we all know, it ain't easy living with a price on your head. You can find us on the socials: Heather at Hawk Awesome, Carla at Carla Marie Giac, GIAC, Todd at Tizod, myself at Aaron Julian, and we're part of the Red 5 Network, a group of some really groovy and cool Star Wars podcasts. That's at Red 5 Network, numeral 5. And of course, our own handle at WSTR Media. You can email us at mailbox@wstrmedia.com. Leave us a voicemail at 630-557-WSTR. That's 630-557-9787. We want to hear from you. Leave us a voicemail and we'll play it on an upcoming episode of the podcast. Our entire back catalog can be found at podcast.wstrmedia.com. We are brought to you by Audible, Amazon's premier audiobook streaming service. You can head on over to audibletrial.com/WSTR to get your free audiobook today, including 2 free Audible originals. That's audibletrial.com/WSTR. Sign up for a free trial, get a free audiobook, help out the show, cancel, no questions asked. It's pretty cool. We also got merchandise. If you head on over to store.wstrmedia.com, you can cover yourself or a loved one head to toe in WSTR merch. And really, why wouldn't you? I mean, the way this year's starting off, all bets are off. So just have at it. Store.wstrmedia.com. And we're also on Patreon, patreon.com/WSTRmedia. Where you can enjoy exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And it's the most direct and awesome way to support our show. You could join our current patrons, Jeremy Myers, Scarif Scuttlebutt, Elena Strikes, and Nicholas Schaefer, in supporting the show and getting exclusive content, including Carla's Costume Corner, Heather's Holocron, and Starside Chat with myself and JD. We took a little break, but we're coming back very soon to our Knights of the Old Republic playthrough. So don't miss that. That is patreon.com/WSTRmedia. Our bills are paid. And Heather, why don't you take it away?
Excellent. Well, if we've paid the bills, now it's time to take out the trash with the Twitter trash compactor. All right, so we threw out a tweet, as we always do. This time it states, what are you looking forward to in 2021? We gave 4 options based on some exciting new things we've heard about, one of which is Bad Batch, the Book of Boba Fett, High Republic content, and Thrawn Greater Good. Of course, we also accept write-ins because sometimes 4 options isn't enough. And we did have a few. We had Garrick Enns write in, is all new Star Wars shows an acceptable answer?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll buy it.
Right? Mm-hmm. Conversations commented too. They said, The Mandalorian added depth to the cool armor of Boba Fett and has made us 2 brand new fans. So they're psyched for the Book of Boba. So, but how did the Twitterverse respond? Well, I'm saddened to say that I did not vote on this one while it was on the Twitter. I know, I have failed my own podcast.
Too slow.
No, it's so bad. Ah.
Oh, well.
So, and then Aaron, you're not on the Twitter.
I'm not, but if I were, I would have voted for High Republic content.
Okay.
Just because for a long time I've said, we need to get out of the Skywalker soap opera. And High Republic just seems like such fertile ground for new stories to be told that I'm invested in that. Book of Boba Fett, not seeing as how he turned out in The Mandalorian, it's like, yeah, I can get behind that. Not my highest priority thing, but yeah, cool.
Sure.
Bad Batch, I guess the more I watch of the Clone Wars, the more I'm like, yeah, I want more of this. And Thrawn, we're going to get more of him regardless, just with the way things seem to be going. So probably not what I'm most looking forward to, just because I know we're going to get it anyway. But yeah, High Republic's got my vote.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, Thrawn is not really something I'm super intrigued by myself. I too am on your, I'm I have to get in there. I just haven't engaged
You'll
yet.
get there. You'll get there.
I'm with you, Aaron, on the Bad Batch situation. I've got to just keep digging into Clone Wars. Maybe that'll become more exciting. And from what I have seen from the reintroduction of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, and then what I have seen with some of the High Republic content and some of the visuals, I do lean towards the High Republic, just because it visually, some of the imagery that's been created for the books and some other things is like, wow, this looks familiar, but it also is brand new.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by that. So it doesn't feel like I'm gonna have to like reintroduce myself to all kinds of different things. Like I won't have to like take the prep class. I can just take the regular class.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of introduction. So I probably would have voted for High Republic content. And it seems like Twitter is sort of on our page, but not totally, because Thrawn got 5% and Bad Batch got 17%. But High Republic, while getting a solid 22%, the Book of Boba Fett, solid 56% of excitement.
That's respectable. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, it can't be bad, but it, I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be bad. I shouldn't say that it can't be, because then I've put myself in a corner.
Yeah, I don't want to idolize Filoni and Favreau too much, but they're also
Sure.
like doing the most work to keep the dream of Star Wars alive.
Yep.
So, and the more I watch of Clone Wars, the more appreciation I get for them. So it's hard not to be like, come on, guys, carry this out to a win.
Right. Totally.
But
Well,
the other side of this coin is like, with so many Star Wars shows coming out in the next few years, it's like one of them is bound to be a stinker.
Yep. So we'll have to see what happens. Yeah. Well, the only way we're going to know about upcoming Star Wars content and existing Star Wars content is to stay up to date on the news, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
So how about we jump over to news of the week?
Let's do it.
All right. So, The Mandalorian. Boston.com. Headlines. Bill Burr fires back at Star Wars fans who say they've never heard a Boston accent in outer space.
Are you kidding me?
Just when you thought it couldn't get weirder, people.
How did I not hear about this?
I don't know, because you love Bill Burr, don't you?
I do. He has a very special place in my heart.
Well, Bill Burr has a message for a certain subset of Star Wars fans. So it's already sort of edited for content purposes, but he says, F those nerdy nitpicking nerds.
Oh, yes.
So during a recent appearance on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, the Canton native discussed his role on the Star Wars series The Mandalorian, where he plays mercenary Miggs Mayfield. computers. So specifically, he is responding to comments that people are making online that are questioning, why does a Star Wars character have a Boston accent? I've never heard a Boston accent in outer space, is what they say, Bird told Fallon. I always go like, oh yeah, what about English? Isn't that a little weird? If you went to a galaxy far, far away and you get off and someone's like, hey, how's it going? And you totally understand them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there was
basic sounds a lot like English.
Just getting started on the rant to a delightful giddy Fallon. What about the fact that Han Solo was talking to a Bigfoot, Burr said, referring to Chewbacca. He's speaking Bigfoot, Han Solo speaking English, and they never break character. But one keeps going, "Arr, arr, arr," and he's like, I said hit the button, Chewie, but that's all fine. Let's not talk about C-3PO with some British accents. So basically, Aaron, the question here is, are we just a little crazy as Star Wars fans that we're nitpicking this much?
I mean, I'm not lumping myself in with those nerdy nitpicking nerds.
No.
No, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know where they dug up the people complaining about that because, Mayfield is one of the better parts of The Mandalorian as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, screw those guys. But yeah, that's typical Bill Burr, the way that he responds. And I'm all about it. So I got nothing to complain about. I mean, it's a fantasy story of make believe in a lot of ways. So you can have it any which way that you want it, and it's going to be fine anyway. Yeah, I don't have a problem at all.
Absolutely. But it is fun to kind of see some fun news out there in the world about Star Wars. This brings a smile to my face.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, if you're looking to bond with more Star Wars characters, tweaktown.com says Ubisoft's Star Wars game, new relatable characters, story, and lore.
Oh my God.
What? Ubisoft's massive new Star Wars game will have iconic, unique, and relatable characters set in an entirely new chapter of lore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Ubisoft's Massive Entertainment has revealed more details about this upcoming game, and it's promising to deliver a story with new iconic characters.
Mm-hmm.
So I know nothing about Ubisoft or this game. Is this part of the High Republic, Aaron? Do we know?
It's not confirmed. All
Okay.
signs seem to be pointing that way, though.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, this has not been officially announced. We just know because of basically job postings saying that this company is hiring for, a new Star Wars game and, read between the lines. Yeah, this is what we're expecting.
Okay. Well, it looks like the creative director, Grady, I'm sure I butchered his last name, he quotes, we want to bring both lifelong and new fans on an immersive and outstanding journey that will stick with them for years. We want to invite players on a journey they've never experienced before in this beloved lore. First, we want to make it a unique game and a saga with a captivating story and a set of characters that players can relate to and connect with. We want to take what is familiar and resonate about Star Wars and tell the stories of new characters who have their own motivations and tasks. End quote.
Okay. So a lot of PR speak.
Right.
So reading between the lines of that, they're wanting new characters, new story, all on its own. And it seems like by that announcement, it's kind of like a story first kind of game, which we'll see how that plays out. But if you take what he said and connect it to what we know about where all these new Star Wars shows are going and the kind of new
Right.
focus on either the High Republic or this kind of Thrawn era of Star Wars, it would seem to maybe point at the High Republic.
Okay.
That's kind of where this game is going. And we know from other sources that it's going to be this kind of big open world kind of game.
Okay.
So if you're what better way to introduce a new era of the Star Wars story and lore, but with a open world game. So that would seem to
Yes.
indicate High Republic to me.
Okay. Interesting.
Again,
All right.
unconfirmed, speculation, rumor, blah blah, etc. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer.
Right. Okay. Well, as a non-gamer, I don't have a whole lot of additional features and things to add, but if I like what Aaron said about introducing a new era through this open world play. So
it's just a bit more background information.
Yeah.
The developers here, Massive Entertainment, they are responsible for a game series called The Division, which is it's two games, The Division and The Division 2, where you play as these kind of special forces type characters who, after a outbreak of a pandemic in New York that causes the whole city to shut down, you're supposed to kind of go in and kind of mop up after all these like kind of opportunistic terrorist types that spring up and try to restore law and order to this place. So that doesn't mean that they're going to make the kind of same game, but in a Star Wars universe. But that's the kind of pedigree that these developers come from.
Okay.
So should be interesting.
Excellent. All right. Good times. All right. So somebody screwed up.
Oh no. Who done it?
OrlandoWeekly.com is going to tell us. So Disney, they may be ready to admit they screwed up their Star Wars land. But
Say it
only
ain't so.
because- I know, but here's the reason. It's only because The Mandalorian is making them do it.
Oh man.
What does that even mean? So, when Disney announced the 2 Star Wars Galaxy Edge lands set for both California and Florida parks, it was clear that the project was in response to Universal's 2 highly popular Harry Potter lands. So, following Universal's lead with Potter, the Star Wars lands were to be an immersive, in-universe land set in specific time and place within the galaxy far, far away. The 14-acre lands were designed to celebrate the newer Disney films instead of the original trilogy. The land even features its own in-canon backstory developed in partnership with Lucasfilm. At the time, the gamble was lauded as the future of theme parks due to the ability not just to ride the movies, but to explore fully fleshed out timeline-specific lands based on both in-person and via smartphones. Okay. So when the first of the 2 lands opened in Disneyland, the immediate signs of the project wasn't as popular as Disney had anticipated. The Galaxy's Edge on the West Coast saw just a fraction of the crowds that the park had expected. Disney World's version opened, the crowds were larger, but still nothing compared to the record numbers Universal had seen. So the lack of nearly any reference to the original trilogy didn't help matters. The Millennium Falcon and Chewbacca were there, but otherwise this was a land filled with lesser known and newer Star Wars characters and references. The poor performance of the film after film proved Disney didn't have the golden touch that George Lucas had. That is, well, until The Mandalorian. So the series, exclusive to Disney Streaming Plus, has basically become an instant cultural phenomenon. It's won 7 Emmy Awards, being praised by critics. So Disney has since greenlit more than a dozen Disney Star Wars projects. So now, Disney is rumored to be throwing out the problematic issues with the canon-specific lands, instead opting for a more generic backstory that allows for them to be more easily introducing of characters of various films and series. With the first, of course, well, let's just call it what it is, Baby Yoda. But really, it's the child. Or Grogu.
Mm-hmm.
Because with Baby Yoda becoming an instant meme sensation and merchandising gold mine, how could they not? So the Millennium Falcon ride may also see some updates here because of this. Rise of Resistance potentially is going to get some updates to better fit the Mandalorian timeline. We're talking about Mando, the Child, Boba Fett, Ahsoka, with regards to some merchandising. So basically, Disney's like, oh crap, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
So, Aaron, you've not been, correct?
I have not.
Okay.
I very much would like to, but between COVID and money, that's not happening
Right.
anytime soon.
Yes.
But from what I can glean from everything that I've read about this place, it's like they have a particular story in mind and wanted the parks to serve that. And when it kind of wasn't as successful as they thought, it looks like they're going to try to be retooling things so that it's more
Mhm.
maybe timeline generic or story generic, that like,
Yep.
anything in Star Wars could show up here. And really, I don't blame them, because making a park like that, that's a huge investment and a huge risk.
Yeah.
And it's when it seems to not be playing out the way that they hoped, time to retool some things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I have been to Galaxy's Edge in Florida. And don't get me wrong, it's still awesome and amazing, but you do miss out on a few things
Mm-hmm.
In the greater Star Wars universe. Especially, you don't get your classic stormtroopers, you get your clone troopers, and Leia's nowhere to be seen, and
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature. And some of the merch is all, sequel trilogy related, and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to, unless it was referenced. I mean, you can get some Yoda merchandise, but that's only because Yoda came back in The Last Jedi and things like that. So
Don't they have that one store where it's like an antiques shop and it's all
yes,
like other
it's
era Star Wars stuff?
yep. So so that's cool. And obviously with the droid depot, and you can build your own lightsaber and stuff, there's some really still wonderful nuggets to it. And
Right.
aesthetically it is very cool, but I do think this would be a good decision for the Disney folk.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, so whether or not this will happen and when it'll happen, obviously time will tell, since that'll be some major financial investments, maybe would be the appropriate term for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In light of a pandemic. So, we'll see what happens, but I don't think it could hurt.
For sure.
So, but Aaron, that's all I have. That is all the news that I have for you today.
All the news that's fit to print. Well, with that, I think it is right about time we get to our favorite part of the show, Cantina Chat. Okay, the part of the show where we talk about all things nerdy and geeky and weird going on in our lives. Heather, what have you been up to?
Ooh, well, not a whole lot this week, surprisingly, and partly because Heather's adulting got in the way.
Oh,
I did finish my cross stitch project. I think Todd threw some images out on the old interwebs of my Firefly characters and quote.
okay.
So be sure to check out the podcast socials for that. So that was a lot of fun. I did watch some Firefly while I cross stitched it because that's what
There you
do.
go.
It's like Inception. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But I work at a company where I support some websites, and our system kind of got crashed due to some fraudulent orders.
Oops.
So I have spent quite a bit of my week working on making sure the world keeps turning. So
Yeah.
you come home at the end of a workday and you're like, ugh. So I did just finish my audiobook. So that was good. A nice little fiction YA title, nothing terribly exciting. Getting ready to start another one once I get it picked out. And yeah, I feel like, I don't know. That's really like it. Isn't that awful? Like, I don't feel like I've done anything.
I mean, you can't be super nerdy every week of the year.
I know. I do still need to watch WandaVision. I'm hearing
Oh, yeah.
all the different opinions. So we'll see what happens.
All right.
Maybe next week.
Maybe so. Well,
Yeah.
Carla wrote in and
Ooh.
she said that she's finished reading From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back. We'll have to ask her about what she thinks about that next time.
Yeah.
She's watching Cobra Kai season 2. Is getting back into photography. That's a cool thing.
Ooh, yeah.
And has started sanding the shore trooper parts, which sounds very, very on point.
Yeah.
And Todd has also wrote in. He couldn't be here tonight, but he said that he's plowing through Light of the Jedi, really enjoying the story.
Great.
Trent and him started playing the video game Sea of Thieves, which turned into watching some Pirates of the Caribbean. I can't find anything to criticize about that. That is awesome.
Right.
Carla and Todd did a fun interview with a special guest that this week that we can't wait for you to listen to. That's going to be episode 206. So that's going to be a night off for some of us going forward. He watched the 2 WandaVision episodes and loves it. Can't wait to see where the series goes.
All right, I gotta watch it then.
All right, you've been put on blast. It's
I
time.
have. Oh my goodness. So, Aaron.
Yes. Me and the apartment folks, we are doing the Great Clone Wars watch through. So, we're not seeing every episode. There's like a skip list.
Oh yeah.
So, well, we're combining that with this fan edit that someone made of the series. Is called like the Essentials edit, something like that.
Okay.
Where it's similar to the skip list, but more pared down. And they try to make the Clone Wars into like 6 different movies. Most of the edits are done with The Mandalorian in mind, so that you can get familiar with kind of the characters and events that are referenced in there. So we've been going through that pretty steadily, and that's been great. I also recently, I don't even know why, I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Rewatched it. I've seen it once before, and that watch through, I was kind of confused because I was like, this is a really beautiful movie, and there's a lot of story here that I know that I'm not getting because I haven't read the books. But it was difficult for me to know, like, they go to like different places and talk to different characters, and like, it was hard for me to think, okay, is this person really important, or is there something to this place that I don't know about that I should be more excited that they're there? I don't know. I was just kind of lost in the soup, but along for the ride, and really enjoyed it. And this rewatch is a lot easier to follow everything that was happening, and so I was able to enjoy it a lot more. I think some of the special effects have not held up over time, but a lot of them did, and a lot of them were like really convincing. And I'm like, dang it, Peter Jackson, you and your magic. Hard to be mad at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I also had 4 D&D sessions the last week, 2 of which I was DMing, 2 of which I was playing in,
Right.
which is a lot, but it was really cool because my players have finally dug up like a lot of lore about what is happening in this place that they're in, and there's a lot of different ways that it can play out. So I'm really excited.
Excellent.
So that's kind of been my week as far as nerdy and
Alright.
geeky things go. And with that, it's about time to wrap up the episode. So thanks again for listening to another episode of WSTR Galactic Public Access. You can check us out on social media at WSTR Media, all one word, all lowercase. And we want to hear from you, so please comment, tweet, rate us on Apple Podcasts. If you give us a 5-star rating, we'll throw in some swag. And you can drop us an email at mailbox@wstrmedia.com or leave us a voicemail at 630-557-WSTR. That's 630-557-9787. Leave us a voicemail. We'll play it on an upcoming episode of the podcast. You can also catch our entire back catalog at podcast.wstrmedia.com. Did I say at WSTR Media? That's our email address. Podcast.wstrmedia.com. Goodness. We also got merch at our merch store, store.wstrmedia.com, and our Patreon, patreon.com/WSTRmedia. We're part of the Red 5 Network, and it is a great family of Star Wars podcasts. Check out at Red 5 Network and our website, www.red5network.com, for all the updates and shenanigans. Thank you so much to our guest, Amy Richau. And thank you again for all of your love for our 200th episode. We put a lot of time and energy into this podcast over the years, and we appreciate all of you. It is all for you. However, we are still on the road to 3,500 Twitter followers. Please help us get there. We've got more prizes to give away. You
I
won't
love that,
regret it.
Aaron. You're like, we love you. However,
You need to step up. All right. So next week, give you a little sneak peek. We have from the Star Wars podcast, Beyond the Blast Doors, David Amoletti. So that's going to be great. Tune in next week for that. Now, Heather, there's
Yes,
only
sir.
one way to end this.
then we have to end it that way.
Now this
This
is podcasting.
podcasting.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
Don't understand. Defense. Never have.
Commander, as long as I stand.
Defense mechanism.
Commander,
Don't understand. Defense. Never have.
Commander, as long as I stand.
Defense mechanism.
Commander,
Don't understand. Defense.
Commander, as long as I stand.
Defense mechanism. Defense mechanism. Let go of your hate. You made it. And do it. Never have. No way. On defense. Command. Let go of your hate. You made it. And do it. Never have. No way. On defense. Command. Let go of your hate. You made it. And do it. Never have. Do it. Command. First day. On defense. Never have. Command. As long as I stay. And on defense mechanism. And never have. Do it. Command. First day. No way. On defense. Never have. Command. As long as I stay. You made it. And on defense mechanism. Never have. Do it. Command. First day. On defense. Never have. Command. As long as I stay. Let go of your hate. And on defense mechanism. Never have. Do it. First day. No way. On defense. Never have. Command. As long as I stay. And on defense mechanism.